All right, so I'm going to get started. I'm presuming you can see me, hear me, and see my screen. My name is Carrie Slade. I'm the Assistant Academic Director of the Innovation and Entrepreneurship Institute, and also a professor in the Department of Strategic Management. In this innovation-related field, I teach about innovation intelligence, scanning the external environment to understand what trends are coming down the horizon that you need to be aware of. So I'm really happy to be here today, really thrilled to welcome our guests. I'll give a couple of introductory remarks and then I'll turn it over to our moderator, Professor Rob Williams. So first, let me give again another great welcome to our guests, two alumni of our Innovation Management and Entrepreneurship Master's Program. First, Séverine Bandou, who's currently the CEO of Pharmact Healthcare, and also Jacy Macchia, External Technology and Partnership Scout for Corteva Agriscienc. And of course, our Professor Rob Williams, who is an adjunct professor at in our program teaching about global innovation strategy, formerly senior manager for innovation at Boeing. So a great lineup to talk about the various ways that innovation and entrepreneurship concepts can play out in science, and how learning more about innovation and how to manage innovation can really help advance your company to the next level. So once again, welcome everyone. I'm Carrie Slade, your host. I'll turn it over to our moderator shortly. Just very quickly about our program, if you are interested or you know someone else who might be interested in furthering their education on these topics, we do have a master's as well as 3 credit certificates. So you could just 3 class certificates rather. So you could just take 3 classes and get a certificate in innovation strategy, entrepreneurship, or healthcare innovation. Or if you want to take 10 classes, you can learn about innovation strategy, entrepreneurship, and technology and innovation management. So if you want any more information about that, feel free to contact me. And I think on the line is our admissions representative, Millie Sakic. So Millie, thank you so much for joining us. And we will have some time at the end of the program if anyone wants to talk with her or get more information about that, either for yourself or maybe a member of your team. So a little bit more about the program. These are some of the courses, and a student wrote to me. I was very flattered. He said, this is the type of course that actually makes you want to do the readings. And I think that's true for the program. We have really interesting classes, really interesting professors. You can see some of them there. So it's not a chore to learn about these topics. It's really interesting and exciting. We also had a alum recently appear on Shark Tank, Jared Cannon, with his company Shipley Good Jars. So we were really thrilled to see those entrepreneurship principles that he learned about put into practice. And if you'd like to get involved with Temple, I'll chat this link a little bit later, so you have the link, or you can scan that QR code. We're always looking for reviewers, for mentors, for other ways to get involved. And of course, if you have any connection with Temple, you're an alumnus or a student or faculty or staff, then you can participate in all of our programs and competitions that are open to our Temple community. Okay, oops, didn't update that slide there, but okay. So I'm gonna stop sharing. Oh my God, shit. Oh. Okay, looks like I unexpectedly quit Zoom. I got an error message. Where did I leave off there?
We saw you the whole time.
Oh, okay, great. All right, just cut out there unexpectedly. All right, I'm sorry about that. All right, Rob, I'll turn it over to you. And let me just make one announcement. We can see everyone's screens here. If you would like to highlight the speakers, if you go to the speaker video and in the top right, click on the 3 dots, you can hit the pin, P-I-N. You can do that for our 3 speakers, and then you'll see just those 3 speakers pop up, so you won't see all the blank cameras. I'm unfortunately not able to pin more than 1 speaker, so I will pin Rob Williams, but if you want to also pin Séverine and Jacy, that would be great. Okay, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you, Carrie. Thank you for the introduction on the program and for today. So welcome, everybody. I'm Rob Williams. I'm a professor in the IME program. I teach the Global Innovation Strategy class, which is both a required class within the Innovation Management track, as well as an elective for the whole Fox School, and frankly, for the entire university. So we're going to be looking at innovation practices today from the lens of practitioners, in particular, people who are, in this field through the science background. So we have two great speakers today who I'm going to introduce in just a bit, but from the biotechnology field and the chemistry field. But I think what you'll find is as graduates of the IME program, they're bringing that science background together with the innovation, entrepreneurship program, and lessons that we get at Temple. And then I think you'll find that from their positions in their two companies, really interesting backgrounds, really interesting positions with their Temple background to move forward. What I want to do first, though, is share a few points. I wouldn't be a good professor unless I, had some other lessons to talk about. And what this will do will set context for the discussions that we're going to have. And then I will say, so we're going to have about 5 minutes of this presentation, a round robin discussion amongst the three of us that I'll lead. And then we'll break about 9:45, and then it'll be time for your questions. And they can be on questions on innovation practices, careers and career advancement, things about the program, their experiences. And then, as Carrie said, we'll wrap up. If for anybody who has questions about the program, we'll have that at the very, very end. So let me just start off with the idea that, our innovation work, especially for the three, myself and our two guests, we operate within an organization, typically a large organization. We'll find that Séverine works in a smaller group, but has a bigger role. And what I would want to just bring to your attention is this work by John Carter of Harvard Business School. I think he put together a very good piece on how innovation really works in organization, what he calls a dual operating system. And for those of you who have studied, through the business programs, Carter's most famous for change management practices. He has actually, I think one of his best writings is How Change Fails. So if you want to look up that article, that's one of the best. But this one is a 2012 on what he called Accelerate. And what he says is there's a dual operating system. There's the hierarchy that we know and that we live within somewhere. But he also talks about, for innovation in particular, there's this informal network of activity going on. So initiatives, but they're actually brought together and have a common purpose through what he sees as a best practice, as a guiding coalition. And so I want you to all think about your organizations and think about your strong hierarchies, but also think about where the innovation work happens. In many organizations, including what the Boeing company I left, a lot of the innovation happened on the informal side. And what we find is that, there's actually people who take time from their day jobs, either formally and sanctioned or informally, just because they are those innovators within an organization, and they become part of that network. So we're going to explore this in our discussion today. Another way to look at our companies and our organizations is the life cycle. And I'm going to be asking our guests today about, where they fit into these life cycles. So you have that discovery phase, which is the early research and development, where you're trying to figure out, do you have, especially in the sciences, those long gestation periods for science that, matures into technologies, into products. Once you finally find that, that sweet spot, then there's an incubation period. And finally, acceleration is where that product line is really taking off. And I bring this to your attention from another great work, I believe, it's a book called Beyond the Champions. And this was research done in the industrial organization association that I was a member of, called the Innovation Research Interchange. And what it is, it's actually a group of about 100 of the top research and development spending companies in the US, Europe, Asia. And they all have that common problem of how do you get, products and services out of the lab into the incubation and then finally into the marketplace. So this book does a really, really good job of focusing on the people aspects of this. How do organizations and people make this happen? So this discovery phase, you can see the kind of, activities that go on there. It's not just research. You're doing all that hunting. And Jacy, who will be meeting just shortly here, this is kind of a sweet spot for his career right now. Then you get into that incubation, and this is where the market meets the technology, meets the product. It's a lot of churning from a lot of different disciplines in order to see whether you actually have, something that's going to succeed in the market or not. Early experimentations being really important. And then finally, once you figure that out, then it's commercialization phase. And this is where you see a lot of those, people have been very successful at growing businesses. This is their sweet spot. Not so much the phases before, but right there, where the companies jump. So if you think of it, and we learned this in our IME program, there's an S curve here. And, you can be going along for, months and years in that discovery phase. You finally figure it out, it pulls together, and all of a sudden you get that first inflection, moving up. And then comes the big investment as you try to target and jump on that first market you identified. So now I just want to show one last area, which is work that I have been doing, especially coming out of industry and the IRI Association. If this was a rough model of how all of our companies look, there's a business side, there's a technical side, and then there's the executive management on top. And by technical side, that could be our sciences, biology, chemistry. It could be engineering. It could be computing science, IT, any of the, what I would call hard disciplines. And then every one of them, for the company to be successful, needs marketing, legal, contracts, intellectual property, all those organizations. So where are the innovators? And I suggest that innovators actually, in most situations, don't reside anywhere in the formal hierarchy, sort of like going back to Cotter's point, they reside in the gaps in between. And that this triangle is trying to show where those innovation, both the workers and the leaders reside. They could be at the middle level all the way up to the CNO, which is the Chief Innovation Officer. So is this all of us? Are all of us in this? And the answer is no. For most of our business, we need to produce, hit our numbers, hit our targets, hit our delivery dates. 80% of the people are working on that sustainable business that generates the cash flow so we can innovate. But there is, I think, I may be, this probably differs by organization, but there may be formal or informally about 20% of the people in both the business and the technical side who are, the innovators, who are thinking ahead, thinking of how the next product comes along, or they've got great relationships, great networks inside, and they can see some of the new successes that might be coming down the road. There's also a place I think we need to recognize when you get, young professional staff in your organization, there's a place for future leaders in here. And that's a job we have also as innovation leaders, is to keep our eyes open for, where the next generation of those innovators are going to come. So what do these people do? And in my opinion, one of the jobs they have is what I call the spanners. These are people who are just naturally inclined to look across the organization, to have good connections in all these different business functions, technical functions. And they're actually the ones they are, wired in to know what's going on and what's percolating and also what's failed. They've got a good sense of what's going on in the company. So they're good cross-organizational. Then they also have this connection up and down. They have the ability to talk to middle, senior, and executive management. And that comes with time. You don't build that, executive C-suite access overnight. It comes through lots of hard work, success, certain number of failures along the way. So again, this isn't everybody. This is that small percentage of us who are in these organizations taking on these roles. And of course, none of our organizations are that simple, three triangles. We've got divisions, we've got operating groups, we've got functions, we've got, our global reach. And besides that, we also have our suppliers, our partners. This gets really complicated with all these different organizations. But I say again that, inside all these, triangles are these innovators. They're inside. And again, some places they're formally recognized and formally given jobs. And many, many times they're not. They're just the, creative, can't be stopped people. The roles across these divisions and functions are the same. They go up and down, they go across at the top. And then finally, this is my get off the stage message is, I think a lot of the success of innovators comes from having mentors, because there isn't a functional organization where you can define that progression up within a function. I'm a first level, I'm a second level, I'm a supervisor, I'm a first level manager. There isn't that kind of high structure because the innovators are everywhere. The thing is to go find those mentors who can coach you on how to be successful within the organization. And I would argue strongly that this is not your boss. Go find other people outside, your strict line, but they are within that purple triangle someplace. So with that as just background, let me introduce our two alums and our topics for today. So first, Séverine Bandou has a biotechnology background, originally from France, worked in the UK and Italy, and now finished her degrees first in Paris, and then finally with the IME program here at Temple. She worked for Gobain, which some of you will recognize as one of the major material companies for the construction industry. A lot of innovation going into that side, from materials all the way to process structures and systems. And she's now joined Pharmact Group, which is a healthcare consulting firm, and just recently became the CEO for an operation here in the North America. So she runs a very small, tight group of well, not all innovators, as I said, but we'll hear Séverine's story. And then finally, Jacy Macchia works for the Corteva Agrisciences. Jacy's got a background in chemistry, and then has moved through his degree there to the IME program here at Temple, and has now been working on external technologies. He's been a leader in some of the formulation work, especially in crop protection. And then as far as an innovator, global formulation program leader, and a lot of good work in open innovation, as well as the Blue Ocean strategy. Again, some of that stuff we learn in our Temple program. So with that, let me stop. And I just want to start with just a little more of an introduction of Séverine and Jacy within their organizations. So the first question would be just a little more description on your role in the company. And I set out that sort of 3 phases of discovery, incubation, and acceleration. Maybe you could say where in that product life cycle you fit in. So Séverine, why don't we start with you, and let's learn a little more about you.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So my name is Séverine Bandou. As Rob said, I'm hailing from Paris, where I already had the innovation bug. I decided to have a master in biotech and innovation, but I never really wanted to be in the lab. So this is why I went into marketing. So I specialize in marketing strategy and how to pretty much roll out new products on the market. And then when I decided to go to London, work in the beauty industry, then in Italy, because I have the wanderlust. I want to meet new people, new culture. But my dream was to come to the United States and to work in business. And I didn't have the business acumen that I wanted. So I decided to enroll in the IME program. And it was great because I managed to meet so many interesting people. I learned so much. And at the back of my head, I always wanted to have my own business. But for now, I'm happy to work with startups. So I started with Pharmact in 2019 as the global marketing director. So Pharmact is a company that exists in 2014. So it's not a new company, but sometimes when you have a startup, you have a false start. And I had to rebrand the entire company because it was not very pharma focused, I would say. So I had to do that, and it took me 1 year to do that. And then when I got the job, I told my boss that I didn't want to be just doing marketing, that I wanted to be in the executive team and eventually get a CEO position and lead the North American market. And that happened in February this year. So I'm a rookie CEO, as I say. So we have different products in our portfolio. We have IVD line, in vitro diagnostic, but we also have these great revolutionary drugs that have 18 applications. And so I have to work on these products. And in the life cycle, I would say that our IVDs, the 2 IVDs that we can roll out on the market, they're ready. I would say that I'm at the bottom of the S curve, just before the acceleration. And for the drug, we developed the drug, but I still need to have clinical trial made here in the US. So I would say that I'm the acceleration part of the life cycle.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jacy, so all of us have big company experience. Séverine is now CEO of a smaller activity, but Jacy, you're still you were part of one of the major well-known organizations, and now a major organization less known. So why don't you tell us about your place in that organization?
Sure. So when I graduated with my BS in chemistry in 2005, I started at DuPont in their Central Research and Development organization that was located in Wilmington, Delaware. I started out as an associate scientist working on the bench and in the hood, doing lots of experiments every day. So it was very much in the discovery phase there. We were looking at like brand new ideas. Some of it was, we saw something in a journal article that looks like it might work on a reaction that we're trying to do. We're going to go try it. And sometimes it works and it turns into like a 5-year-long project. And sometimes it doesn't work. So in working with DuPont, there was the very large Dow and DuPont merger that happened, was announced in 2016. And the whole plan for that was to have 2 very large and very old companies merge together and split into 3 companies. And the third company being taking the agricultural focused business units from both of the parent companies and spitting that out into a pure agriculture company, what is now known as Corteva Agriscienc. So we are the largest pure agriculture company in the world. We have about 23,000 employees, operations in over 110 countries, and our R&D unit has over 5,000 employees. And I also had to move to Indianapolis from the Philadelphia, which unfortunately, I love Philly.
Right.
So here in Indianapolis, I have been a member of the Open Innovation Team, which is a platform that looks at nimble ways to collaborate externally, predominantly focused at your university research groups and startups. And through my work with that team, I was asked to become the external technology and partnership scout for the crop protection R&D unit. So I have about 500 clients that are the scientists and the leaders within crop protection, and I support them in identifying and assessing external partners that we could potentially collaborate with, and then also guiding them through the process of making the relationship, building the relationship, figuring out what our proof of concept experimentation is going to look like, what our measures of success are, and then also, if it's successful, hopefully, ushering that into implementation or integration into our regular processes.
So Jacy, can you, I was originally thinking you were in that first discovery phase, but I'm thinking I may be limiting you there.
I mean, I would say that I go through all three phases.
Okay. Okay.
Sometime, I mean, I have about 20 external partners that I'm working with right now that are at all different phases. And then, yeah, and then in addition to that, I also am the program leader for R&D for new product concepts for urban pest management portfolio. That includes the world-leading Centricon product line for the preventative and curative treatments for termites, and also supporting our existing products in that.
Okay.
So I work with our 4 external manufacturers on that.
Well, given where you both are, I think you probably need the full portfolio of training that you got through Temple in order to be successful. I wanted to test you both on this idea that I presented at the beginning about the formal hierarchical structure versus the informal networks that are led, as Cotter says, by a guiding coalition. The people who really understand the strategic intent of the company, where it's going, and foster, those creative projects. So Séverine, why don't we start with you? And you're at the top of the hierarchy now. How do you think you're got the formal structure versus this informal network that Cotter sees?
So Pharmact is a German company, so I lead a very small company here.
Okay.
So I don't have to deal with as many partners as Jacy managed for now, because again, we had the former CEO and things didn't go well, and it kind of let everything like in shambles. So the first few months of being the CEO was to put things back together, okay, and to lead with the vision of the company, of the board members that are based in Germany. So yeah.
Okay. How much interaction do you have then with the home parent company, and how much, do you have a sufficient freedom in your innovation management, or do you get a lot of instructions from headquarters?
Actually, I'm pretty lucky because the board is not after me, so they trust me 100%, which is great. So as long as I present my ideas in a concise way and I show them how I can improve the bottom line and help with the business organization, they don't really resist my decision.
Okay. Yeah, I'm going to ask about practices and leadership in a minute. So, well, thank you. So, Jacy, how about you? It seems like you might be, well, you sound extremely busy, and I can't imagine that gets done in a formal hierarchy very well.
There's a little bit of both, I would say. So in terms of thinking about like top-down innovation, we have our commercial teams who are coming up with new product concepts. And I'm not involved with that in a global level, but for the group of clients that I serve, that's where a lot of our technology gaps and needs come from, is figuring out what's coming up, what's new and emerging as a need, what we're seeing in our 5-year plan for a product pipeline, and how we're going to address that. And then I also have bottom-up innovation, where I have my scientists that are coming up with ideas of how to address those needs. Finding ideas of how we can enhance our capabilities or build more robust and more sustainable products. But then as someone who is a program leader, I am on our product concept team for urban pest management. So I do interact with the commercial team there, trying to figure out how do we create a competitive advantage with our new product. All kinds of different ideas on that team.
Okay. Yeah, I do not want to see your Zoom schedule. I cannot imagine what your day looks like. But so let's go to, the things we learned at Temple and the things that transformed you both from scientists into innovation leaders, innovation managers. So if you can think back to, your curriculum at IME, were there any particular practices that you learned? I'm thinking like business models or open innovation, platforms and ecosystems. Is there anything that stuck with you that you think really helped you succeed where you are right now in your current job?
Yeah, so basically my toolbox that I created at the IME, I use I'm actually working right now on a feasibility plan to show the board in 2 weeks, actually. So that helped a lot. I have to raise some money here. So the elevator pitch best practice will be very helpful. And there is a business model canvas that I use in my previous position when I worked at Saint-Gobain, because I was working on the corporate venture arm. And so we needed to show them how the product can fit their business model. And when we work with startups and software, because they would think that the software is gimmicky. So we had to show them exactly how the product can fit in the business model of the startup. But I would say that the feasibility plan it's super important in my job, in my day-to-day job right now.
That's excellent to hear. Jacy, how about you? What's your toolbox look like, and how often do you dip into it?
I will say it's been a few years since I graduated. So everything, all those toolboxes and whatnot are not exactly the most fresh in my mind. But I will say that some classes that have really helped me were design thinking, and utilizing that as a way of thinking about how we build customer-centric products, whether it's farmers who are our customers, or if it's my customers for technology scouting, like what do they really need? How would they use this? And a lot of just building my business acumen in general, being able to talk on the same level as my commercial team or my director, and not having to be like, I don't know what you mean. Can we slow down a second? And also knowing like the lingo and the types of responses that they're expecting when asking me questions.
You're actually bringing up a point that I want to migrate to right now, because you both, again, came from the sciences. I came from engineering. Learning the business, learning, what the finance people know, learning what the contracts people know, learning what the lawyers know. That's on the job training. And you can either learn it yourself, or you can make a lot of friends quickly in those departments. And then if you're actually going to be advancing innovation products, you actually have to lead, and you have to lead the people in those other organizations. So I want to talk about leadership and how you evolved your own leadership style in innovation, which I contend is very different than being a leader in a single function. So let's start with you, Jacy. What would you say are some of the keys to your leadership style within the scope of innovation?
I would say that being open-minded and listening, really, and building trust with folks. And part of that is also being vulnerable, saying that you don't know what you're talking about, or sharing with them something that you wouldn't necessarily share with someone if you were more of a closed person. But establishing that relationship and trust is very key. It also helps to build followership, which helps to generate buy-in. If you need to talk people into things and get them on to your way of thinking, it can be very helpful.
And how about building that trust with executives? What do you think was key to building that relationship?
I think you just have to be consistent in your performance. Show up every day ready to dig in and fight. I mean, you just have to have a good track record, and be willing to speak up when you have an idea, or if something is not going right. It stinks to be the bearer of bad news, but someone has to do it, and being able to deliver that to someone in a timely manner that is clear and concise can be very valuable.
Okay. Yeah, I think given the breadth of your work, that consistency of your own style both would add to your own sanity, but also add and build that trust. So, and Séverine, I'm thinking of you, you're in that very interesting spot where you worked hard to get where you are as the CEO of at the top of an organization. You had to demonstrate leadership skills in order to get that promotion. And you had to simultaneously probably build relationships with at least several board members so that they would trust you in that capacity. Can you talk about how your leadership style and innovation has evolved?
Sure. To John Jacy, I'm always transparent because I feel that, when you go into this, you meet these new people and they don't especially have this business acumen. They're surgeon or IT computer. The co-founder is IT and the other one is a surgeon. It's their baby, so they're very they have it's their product, their baby. So when you from the outside, you need to little by little trying to like warm them up. And I faced some cultural clash as well, because I would have this American way of doing business. So I'll be very direct in my emails and sometimes. So trying to be transparent as much as I can and show them also that I know what I'm talking about, because I encounter that a lot. Like, you don't know what you're talking about, because I'm on the younger side.
Right.
There is this also generational clash that I had to face as well. But I always make sure that when I present my ideas, that I'm on top of everything. When they ask questions, I need to know not everything, but almost. And if there is a challenge, to make sure that not just to complain and point out the challenge, but to bring a solution always. And I always tell them, if it's a startup, like sometimes things go south, but there is always a way to go west. Like we can pivot, fail fast and pivot fast. So that's what I brought to it.
Okay. So that sounds like you've done a good job of creating the culture. You learned about culture, then now you're implementing it within your span of control there. I'm glad you also brought up the idea of, innovators from different regions of the globe. We do learn that in the Temple program. We do cases and studies on, do you innovate in one country? Do you customize in another, or can you reverse innovate, from an overseas location and bring it back to the home market? Let me ask you a particular question about, global innovation, because you've spanned at least one ocean. And is there any lesson for us in global perspective and innovation?
I would say to learn how to communicate with different culture. It's very, very important. And the fact that I was born in France, but I work with British people, with Italians, and now with Americans, I kind of adapt very fast to the culture. Okay. On the other side of the ocean, it took a little bit more time for them to adapt, but really like be open and learn. I remember I took that class the first year of the IME program, and my last paper was about cultural differences and leadership. And really, I would say that if you can learn a little bit about the culture of the people that you're dealing with, like how they talk. For example, in Germany, they put a lot of exclamation point in their emails. And I know that it's trivial, but at the beginning, when we were with the US team, we're like, why are they shouting at us all the time? But it's nothing. But so sometimes some people would get a little bit upset, like, why is Eric shouting at me? But it was not meant in that way. So if you can learn how to navigate these cultural differences, you will spare yourself a lot of headache.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. And Jacy, it dawns on me that, as you said in the beginning, your company has global reach, I'm sure you're not just sitting in the central part of the United States thinking of great ideas. You're interacting with the world as well. Any lessons on global innovation? Besides time zones.
That's what I was thinking, but I mean also like especially when you're interacting with someone for the first time or trying to like get through those first phases of hello. It is really impolite to schedule a meeting at like 10 p.m. on a Friday, just because you don't realize it's 10 p.m. on a Friday in Japan. And that's how you like start off on a bad foot. But yeah, and I think that also it is important to with accents to ensure that you are understanding what they're saying, and there's a polite way to do that and an impolite way to do that. And so it takes some learning to get it right, but it can be very helpful to not only build a good relationship, but to make sure that things keep moving forward in a positive direction.
Yeah, I suspect, having done some of that international hopping myself, it's always best when you can have that first interaction in person, get to meet, get to learn, you get the full body language, and then you can proceed, through the other media, but to try to start off, I'm sure it's been hard, this past year and a half to get these international relationships fostered. I'm going to ask you both about mentoring next, but I want to tell the audience that we're going to come up right after this mentoring question. We're going to open up for questions from you all to any of us, all three of us, and you're welcome to either write questions in the chat, and I'll monitor that, and then I'll bring those questions in, or this is a small group. We can just raise hands, and then you can, I'll recognize you, and then we'll put you right into the question for any of us and go that way. So you have two options. Think of your questions, but I want to talk about that mentoring. You both are now seasoned enough and have positional authority in your companies where you are both have been mentored in your past. You're probably at a stage where you can mentor. I'm assuming you might be. And then, of course, until you become, the CEO of the whole company, which will be in another 5 years, right, Séverine? That you still have an opportunity to be mentored as a middle manager in a much larger organization. So first question is, do you have mentors? And then second would be, what makes for a successful mentoring relationship? Because I do believe mentoring is one of the most important tasks we can take on as innovation people, is finding people outside of our immediate chain of command. So Séverine, well, let's talk with you and your mentors and your history.
So I don't have an official mentor right now, but I reach out a lot to my professor from the IME program.
Wonderful.
And I reach out to my friends that have their own companies. So I have female friends that are founders and CEO in the UK and in France and also here. So whenever I have a question or I'm a bit stuck and I feel like I'm in the Harvard business case and yep. I can't see the light, I try to reach out to the founders, my professors. I was a TA for two of my professors. So I tend to reach out a lot to those two particular professors.
Wonderful.
I would really like to be able to mentor student at some point. At the moment, I'm very, very busy, but later down the road, this is something that I would like to do eventually.
Okay, I saw Carrie wrote your name down for future mentoring opportunities. So how about you, Jacy? How about you and mentoring up, mentoring down? What's your thought?
Yeah, so I mean, mentoring and coaching are different. Yep. I have a coach that I meet with every other week who also is in the external technology space, who's been doing it for much longer than myself. We kind of hash things out that way. And sometimes we're just having a conversation and it's not really that focused. Sometimes I have burning questions. In terms of receiving mentoring, I don't have a mentor per se. I do have a few senior level scientists that I will reach out to when needed. And I think that's important to say, hey, I'd like to do a mentoring session. These are the things that I want to talk about, or the areas, these are the questions I have. I want your opinion or your experience, perspective, ahead of time so they know what they're coming into, because goal-oriented mentoring is a good thing. I've spent more time mentoring other people, be it earlier stage scientists and interns. I had interns probably for about 8 years, almost consecutively. We had a few intern programs that were year-long ones where I had pretty much an intern sort of reporting to me, and I was mentoring them through that. And I still talk to a lot of the interns that I worked with.
And do you make a distinction between sort of, everyday, like especially with interns, you're just trying to get them out of the collegiate mentality into a corporate mentality. There's a lot to share there. How about specifically within the realm of innovation? Maybe some of those young scientists you're working with, are you giving them ideas of how to be more than a bench scientist?
I think so. A lot of it is, in some ways, it's more coaching than mentoring. Okay. Asking them the questions that get them to that next thought, and they thinking more innovatively, more creatively out of the box. A lot of it is also pointing out to them that like they had this experience in a large corporation. Are you going to go to grad school, or are you going to try to go into industry? What does that look like for you? Do you even like the sciences? Do you want to work in a lab? Also giving them pointers on their resume and cover letters, and talking about how to approach people when you're applying for jobs. Good. Well, every young professional needs that help from somebody who's tripped over the booby traps along the way. So, well, let's open it up for questions from everybody who's attending today. Think of how, any aspect of how the IME program helped careers. If you're in a place where you think, innovation practices might support what you're doing next, maybe leave those questions for the end. But if you have questions about, how these middle level managers, senior executives, play and balance everything with innovation, those are perfect questions. So Dominique has asked, describe a challenging situation or experience and the mindset that helped you turn that challenge around. So Jacy, why don't we start with you? Challenging situation and the mindset that helped you turn it around. Thank you, Dominique. I would say that probably one of the more challenging days that I've had in my career. I was working on a small project team that we were considered basically an internal venture at DuPont. And our team leader went to, I guess, probably talk to the CEO, was who they were talking with, figure out what was going on with our project. He came back and he was like, so they want to spin us off. They want to monetize us. And then there was just like panic. Everyone was like panicked. And I tend to not be the type of person that panics in any kind of situation. I'm that cool cucumber that you want to have like the clarity. And I was like, wait a minute, we're in a place where we have the power right now. They've just said that they want to monetize. That can look any number of ways. We can sit here right now and focus that conversation onto outcomes that we would actually want or be interested in, and ones that we want no part of. And that kind of really refocused the conversation and turned it into a very productive 3-hour conversation, where everyone on our team was chiming in and providing feedback openly, instead of just being like responsive and the sky is falling.
Well, that sounds like one, a lot of wisdom, and two, turning chaos into opportunity that helped all of you and your peers. Good story. Séverine, how about you? A challenging situation, and how did you manage it?
So actually, it's fairly recent. We had a rapid test for an antibody test for the COVID-19 that we're trying to put on the US market, but the FDA went on a rampage last year in October and this year in March, just when I took over as a CEO. They were asking us for clinical validation that we had to submit in less than 48 hours, which is impossible. So I had 24 hours to think about what to do, because we had investor in Germany, and we're not be very happy if we could not sell the product on the North American market. But so either I was getting the product would be kicked out of the list, and then we would have stained the Pharmact name, or to remove the product altogether. So I decided to talk to the board and said that to limit the damage, that I would schedule a meeting with the FDA and tell them that we were going to withdraw the EUA. I didn't sleep so well, because I knew that then they would have to face the investor in Germany, but I had no other choice really. So I always tell myself, okay, so when I take decision, I had like a process. So I write it down, decision 1, decision 2, decision 3, then what would be the outcome, the most possible outcome. And then I literally try to feel how it would be if this outcome were to happen. And I said to myself, well, will the whole company will go down if I picked the wrong decision? And if I say to myself, I don't think the whole company in Germany and the US will go down, so just take the decision that makes more sense, really. And it's not, as long as it's not a matter of life or death, or the company will completely shut down, it's fine. So that's how I don't stress too much about taking decisions.
But well, it sounds like you both have that rare ability to step back from the chaos and systematically look at the situation, simultaneously calming down your peers and then putting in, structures in place that I think, again, these are the kind of things we learn in innovation management, of techniques, to assess opportunity, to assess risk, to assess uncertainty, to be able to step back from that. And Séverine, to say that you could do that in, a short period of time, like 48 hours, is remarkable. But I think that's the kind of skill that, we get over time by repeated practice. And again, it's not something that you would get necessarily if you were in a single function. It's this cross-functional nature. Let's see. There was a question about books that have been influential or readings. I shared some of my favorite earlier too. Jacy and Séverine, do you have a reading or an author who you think is an absolute must read in order to succeed in innovation?
Absolute must read.
Maybe one of those 2 professors you thought of?
I would say the Lean Startup from Eric Ries was one of the staples, and the Blue Ocean.
Okay.
Yeah, those 2.
Okay, good. And Jacy, you probably have a trove. What do you think?
I don't really have a trove at all.
Really?
I'm having trouble.
Uh-oh.
I would say that The Innovator's Dilemma. I've never actually read the whole thing. I've read like the summary, but it definitely rang true for me working in very large companies that have their core businesses.
Right.
Especially working in agriculture, which is we're very risk averse because it's such a regulated industry.
Yeah, I would
being able to
supplement your
plan
point.
out,
That's
yeah.
Clayton Christensen, Harvard professor, and he took that work and then he came up with Innovators Solution, and then he did segments. He did industry segments. So I can recommend, whether you're in education or medicine, he's got books in those areas. But I think one of the things that he did, and I use in my class, he has an article on the innovator's DNA. And I think that's a really important article to read, because it talks about the attributes of innovation people, innovation leaders. He's got 5 disciplines that he has identified basically through all the hundreds of people he's worked with over decades. So I think that's another complement to the innovator dilemma, is the innovator's DNA. So yeah, so Kevin's got a question about investing time. This may be our last question. We're gonna hang on for a while after, but if anybody who has to jump off at the top of the hour, this will be the last question to answer for that. So how do you get people to invest their time in you? What do you have to offer them, and believe in your abilities? So yeah, that sounds very personal. Séverine, what do you think?
Well, I don't know. We should ask the professor. I guess I really, really like the classes, and I was a student in their classes. I don't know, maybe they saw that I really wanted it. I don't know. It's yeah, we should ask the mentor what they see us.
Yeah, there's something about that relationship that you built over time that I'm sure became beyond just student faculty kind of relationship. And I will tell you, as a faculty member, it's as important for us to gain from those relationships with student success, especially professionals, who are working in the industry and fighting battles every day. It's just as important for us. So again, these relationships sustain over years, well beyond, what you learned in the 2 or 3 years of the degree program. So, and then Jacy, let's end with you. How about you? How do you get people to invest in you, and what do you demonstrate?
I mean, like I said, I do not have a standing mentor
Right.
relationship, but I think that's
but you're gaining insights from others, and there's a way that they share with you.
I mean, I think that it's nice to be recognized as someone that's an expert. And so when I go to them and be like, hey, I would like to talk about this thing, or I'm having trouble with this, I'd really like your perspective on it. It's flattering for people to want that insight from you. And I mean, people like to help other people as well. It's not that hard. I don't think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. So let's do this. So we're at the top of the hour. Carrie, do you want to say any closing things, and we'll just stay on for a little while for anybody else who wants to hang on?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Thank you so much for our guests for taking time to share their experiences. Like Rob said, I'm happy to stay on and chat with anyone. I think Mile Sakic is on as well, if anyone wants to chat with her. I put our emails in the chat, and Séverine and Jacy, if you can stay on a couple minutes, that's great. If you have to run, we understand that too. But thanks again for joining us, everyone. And thank you, Rob, for moderating. Excellent job.
You're very welcome. So we did get interesting. Anish has a question about sort of the formal aspects of learning. He asked about education, certifications, what, if anything, and in particular, I'd ask about, your Temple experience as being, somewhere along that pathway, in the early half of your career. How did that training affect you from, again, being, what otherwise would be a scientist, turning into a business person, and especially into an innovation leader? So certification, education, the timing of that in your careers. I guess it's on you, Séverine. It looks like we lost JC.
Yeah.
And I can tell you my story there too.
So can you, sorry, I was sending an email to the group about
Sure. So Anisha, Anisha had a question about, what I would think is, focused on formal education, certification, and the importance of that. And I would add the timing of that, in a professional career, especially if you're coming from the sciences and you want that broader role like you sought. What tell us about how that training, was at the right time?
Yeah, it was at the right time because I think that I benefited more about the program being older, so already having some professional experiences and this scientific background. I really soaked everything in and tried to connect what I learned on the job, on my marketing jobs, and how I could bring that to the table whenever I had to, for example, write a paper or when I participate at the Be Your Own Boss Ball. I actually, having this marketing strategy experience helped me a lot, because you see that a lot of innovators, sometimes they have great ideas, and I have that right now in my job. I can see that they have these great products, but they don't know how to market themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So the IME program was really complementing my career, and it came at the right time. I would say I was mature enough to understand that.
Yeah, you had the benefit of having both business and technology or science before coming to Temple, and then I'm assuming Temple's program built, broaden the technological understanding and broaden your business understanding. So that's good.
And all the processes and understand a lot of, for example, I didn't know anything about how to raise money. That helped a lot, because I would have to use those skills right in the next few months. So that's invaluable.
Very good. And JC, how about you? You came from that deep science background as well. How about the Temple program and formal education?
Yeah, so I will also say that right before I started the IME program, I got certification in project management as well, which helped me a lot and got me a lot of additional responsibilities to what I was already doing. I just kind of keep adding things on. As I started to learn more about business through the IME program, that just kept building on top of the project management and the science until on my team, I was like the person who knew things about business. Whenever people had a question about things, they would come to me and be like, what do you think about this? How do I define a value proposition? Just like questions that kind of seem silly after taking the class. I'm like, it's not that hard. But at the same time, I understand that you've never really thought about it, so you don't know what you're doing. Yeah.
I find it interesting you got the program management or project management background. Many times I find, project management is, the killer of innovation, because, we're on the clock, everything's been laid out. There's no variance from, the plan we set out 6 months ago. So anybody who can do that balancing act of execution against a schedule and a cost, budget, but still innovate, that's also a rare gift. And I think having that kind of training is important too. I had program management, experience and training, and to be an innovator and to appreciate, by the way, what the executors who are doing the program and project management, what their problems are, while still trying to, convince them, that there's room for innovation, there's room to take a risk. There's some budget or some schedule that, we have flexing that we can, test a few experiments. That's important to understand what's going on in the other person's shoes. So My friend Josh Cohen also recommends the book Competing Against Luck. He and I both got to hear Clayton Christensen speak about that topic. That may have been his last book. He passed away about 3 years ago. So thank you, Josh.
Welcome.
Yeah, go ahead.
Just saying welcome.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank
And
you,
yeah.
Josh. Any other questions from our group here? All right, well, I think I'm going to wrap up, and then Carrie gets the final wrap up. Thank you very much, Séverine, Jacy. Thank you for sharing your background, your accomplishments to date. And if I'm left with anything out of this, is just how much more challenge you have ahead of you. And I'm sure glad you're Temple graduates, because I know you'll do fine. Any final words, Séverine or Jacy?
My final words would be to don't take no for an answer. And when you're scared, just do it scared. That was my motto all the time. Even when I was in France, I would just go to the professor and say, I don't want to be a professor anymore. I want to do biotechnology. I know that I didn't send you my transcript, but I want to do it. This is how I always take opportunities. I just don't care. I just do it.
So now we know how you got to be a CEO. Jacy?
I think that my comments are along the lines of Severine's as well. I would say don't be afraid to ask for things, or to let management know what your aspirations are, or what your interests lie. A lot of the roles and responsibilities I've been given is I simply walk in the office and be like, hey, I'd like to be more involved in IP this year. Can we do that? And the answer was yeah. We'll figure that out. And I mean, additionally, I cold call, email people all day long. It seems scary, but it's really easy. And that's external people and internal people. I'm constantly talking to people who have no idea who I am or why they should be talking to me. But I mean, one of my directors did say that I was fearless, so maybe that's just who I am.
Yeah. So before it goes back to you, Carrie, I'm just going to chime in here too. Courage is absolutely something that, differentiates the innovator. And I remember when I finished my, master's for innovation, the first thing I did was, march up to a vice president who was starting a whole new operating division. And I said, I'm getting this degree. I've got this background. And he goes, well, I just happen to have a need for somebody who will, and, literally stepped into a job as a new division was being formed. And it was, one of the best career moves I made. So anyway, so courage.
You just have to, because everybody is scared. Like, everybody has fear. Just change, you look at fear and changing into excitement. Like I had to take public speaking classes to be able to speak in American business English to present my business ideas. And I was scared, but then I said, why are you scared? You wanted to be in the US, you wanted to do this, you need to be excited, not scared.
Very good. All right, Carrie, over to you.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I love the words of wisdom, and I think it does show that innovators ask a lot of questions and take risks. So the way you can, the more you can do that, calculated risks, the better potential options you'll have. So, all right. Thank you everyone for tuning in. Thank you, Séverine, Jacy, and Rob. I really appreciate it. And we will send out the recording if you'd like to pass along to anyone, or for anyone who maybe wasn't able to attend. So have a great rest of your afternoon, everyone.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.